Hello, it's me, your favorite indie author, Julian Greystoke, author of such books as Adventurer Mage, the story of a young woman who befriends a mage and they go off on adventures. It's right in the title. I feel like I should promote my books more. I don't know. We'll see if I keep doing this. Anyway, hello. I'm Julian Greystoke. I'm an author and developmental editor, and today I'm here with some writing advice. Before I begin, I always like to remind everyone that I am not the god of writing, and any advice or things that I talk about here in this video are just my advice, not be-all, end-all rules that you must follow and obey.
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
Today we're kind of doing writing advice and kind of talking about a topic that is, well, near and dear to my heart, also kind of risky. Now, many of you know that I love a good fanfic. I enjoy writing fanfic, and I have done quite a bit of it in my life, as well as writing original works. I've written fanfic for a very, very long time, although I have always done so in conjunction with original works, whereas some writers will start out only in fanfic and then move to original works. And this conversation is for both of those types of writers, but more so I feel for people who are especially moving from exclusively fanfic into original work. Now, I do have at least one video talking about how helpful it can be to write fanfic before you write original, or to write fanfic in conjunction with writing original. So I'm not going to be talking about that too much today. What I am going to be touching on today is the dangers of transitioning from fanfiction to original fiction. Now, just because I'm going to point out some pitfalls does not mean I'm telling you not to do it. For whatever reason, people seem to think that when I tell them something could be challenging or that they might have to watch out for certain things, they think I'm telling them not to do it, when in reality I'm just like, hey, be wary. Hey, be aware. Hey, this might be harder, so, mentally prepare yourself. So let's talk about some of the potential pitfalls of moving from fan fiction into original fiction. Some of these pitfalls also have flip sides that are advantages. So it's really all in the execution. I have just made a list here in my notebook, so I'm just going to go down the list. So the first potential sticking place is in world building. Because you're so used to the fiction you're working with coming with pre-packaged world building, it can leave you lacking world building skills of your own. And I have seen this many times from writers who come from a fan fiction background. It's not that they don't have world building in their heads. It's not that they don't know or understand their world. They just sort of assume that the reader already knows it, even if they haven't put it in the book. And that can come from the world of fan fiction, where the reader very probably does know all of that world building and doesn't want you to bother putting it in the story because they already know it. Let's see how many times I can say this in this video, and this is something that I often tell my clients when I'm developmentally editing for them, because I'm also a developmental editor. Remember that the reader doesn't have anything but what you put on the page. Assuming that they know something from not enough context clues isn't enough. Especially when it comes to world building, sometimes you do have to be direct. Now, it can be a balancing act. You can go too far and over-explain things or treat your reader like they're dumb. But also, if you don't tell them or show them what the world building is, they don't have it. And that can lead to confusion in your story or frustration on the part of the reader as they're trying to understand your world while you're going along assuming that they know it already, that they somehow have gleaned it from what's happening, and they haven't. Next up, another pitfall is characterization, for roughly the same reasons. Because you may be used to working with pre-existing characters, you forget that you can't just have them doing stuff and assume that the reader knows who they are or how they would behave. Remember that these characters and everything in this book is all new to the reader. So you have to put it in, and especially with characterization, it's super important that you show it through the characters' actions, thoughts, feelings, reactions, and not just tell the reader who the character is. Sometimes it can be tempting, again, coming from fanfiction, to just give a quick summary of who the person is and assume that's good enough, when in original fiction, we would rather get to know the character as we begin the story. Another thing that can be a problem, though, is also one-to-one characters, which is where you just take a character out of another work and you put it in your story. And at a certain point, that's just plagiarism. Like, there are archetypes that you can definitely use from story to story, and I mean, we have seen the exact same tall, buff, tan, dark curly-haired man with tattoos in just about every romantasy that's coming out right now. So you can get away with a lot. But at a certain point, if the character's too recognizable, then it's just stealing. Backstory. That's another thing that can be a pitfall because, once again, you're assuming that your reader knows it. You assume that your reader comes in with more information than there is. And I have seen it many times where it's just sort of assumed that the reader will know the character's backstory somehow. It's like, nope, we don't know that. You have to tell us. You have to show us. You have to give it to us. So in general, all of those things kind of lump into this one category that is details that you are used to being obvious or you're used to the reader already knowing. And that is basically summed up one of the biggest overall pitfalls of going from fan fiction into original fiction is the assumption that the reader already knows certain information. You just haven't gotten used to putting it into your rhythm and to having it be part of your natural writing flow as a storyteller to put in this information that the reader is going to need. So I definitely recommend that you do look at what other authors are doing, how they introduce these aspects to their stories, learn from that, and really internalize like when and how people are putting these details into their books. You might not even realize they're doing it because you're so used to the way that stories flow. So definitely read with that critical eye. And when I say critical, people think I mean criticizing, but I mean critical as in looking for details. But anyway, back to my list of things that are pitfalls, and another one of those pitfalls is lack of plot. You can get away with lack of plot in fan fiction. In fact, often it's a feature, but in original fiction, you need a plot. It can be a lot of different things, but you need one. Those are pretty crucial. There's very little argument to me that could be made for a plotless story if you actually intend to publish it. The key to the plotless stories in fan fiction is that we already like these characters, we're already attached to them or their setting or whatever you're doing with them. Oftentimes, we just want to see them bone. But you can't give us strangers in a world that we don't know and expect us to be just as okay with nothing happening. Another thing that people can often miss out is description. How many times am I going to say it? It's because you're used to your reader already knowing what things look like. Now, I don't want you to assume your reader is dumb, and there are some places where you can definitely just be like, they'll figure it out. A lot of times when I'm writing about horses, I don't go into detail about every single piece of tack that I mention or every single horsey detail that I mention. Those are usually small things, not things that are crucial to the story or things that will be overly confusing if the reader glosses over them. We lose nothing. But if it's larger things, like describing places or people or important objects, because you are used to assuming that the reader knows what they look like, then we run into problems. And finally, the last pitfall is that often books that are written by people who have just moved over from fan fiction can be fairly derivative. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily always a bad thing, and many fan fictions that have become published books wear their derivativeness on their sleeve, but it can also be something that puts a reader off. So it can be a choice that you make about how derivative of your inspiration that you want to be, or if you're just doing something as original as you can. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing is completely original. If you think you have a completely original idea, you just haven't found the million other people who have also written that idea yet. But watch out for being so derivative that you're just stealing parts from other stories and not bothering to make them your own and not bothering to grow them into something. That happens in a lot of, unfortunately, very popular books right now, where they are just tropes thrown together into a book with very little attempt to stitch them together or make them meaningful. And here on this channel, I like to assume that we want to write like good books and not just piles of tropes given an unimaginative title. Sorry if those kinds of books are your guilty pleasures, but that's not the kind of book we're talking about here today. Even if you want to write a book that's a lot of your beloved tropes, it can be done and still be good if you put in the work to take those derivative elements and make them your own, spin them your own way, turn the world into your creation, instead of just regurgitating the same things over and over again. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the pitfalls of writing original fiction after you've only been writing fan fiction. Is this a place that you are in? Are you maybe coming from writing fan fiction and thinking of really dipping your toes into writing original fiction? Let me just tell you that because I write fan fiction, some elements of my favorite IPs make it into many of my books in very subtle ways. If you're familiar with the Dragon Age games, you're going to notice a few little things in this book, for example, although in most of my books, let's be real, like little tidbits for you. You're gonna be like, oh, I reckon I see what you did there. But the bulk of this book is not that. Does that make sense? Anyway, let me know in the comments below what your advice is for moving to writing original fiction from writing fan fiction. And feel free to go to the comments and see if there's any advice down there that I didn't give in this video. As I always mention, I am a developmental editor, so if you've got a book and you'd like somebody to get their eyes on it and maybe make sure that it's not too fanficky, and maybe look for places where you forgot to do any of these things, because sometimes that just happens, you can hire me. I am on Fiverr, and you can message me over there and we can chat and see if I might be a good fit for your book. And as I mentioned previously, I do have a video that's all about the great things that you get from starting in fanfiction, so go check that video out if you're feeling kind of discouraged right now. That one will tell you all of the cool skills that you can gain through fanfiction that you can then take into your original fiction. Anyway, I've got at least one more video to film tonight, so I'm going to leave you all, and I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Angel, angel, angel. Does every conversation we have to come around to that freak? Hey man, how you doing?
You want to know who I won't stop talking about? My patrons. Patrons like Jen, Tex, Moon Island, Zenith, Corey, Ashley, Bunna, Nemo, Tactical Hot Dog, Haley History Nerd, Stephanie, Pixelizzy, Raya, Christina, Cameron, Lady Kragan, Jose, Lunar Muse, AJ, Marshy, Semi-Dark, GK, Annika, Jen, Gay Tutter, Tina, Laknunga, SB Boots, Martha Baggins, July, Bird Anonymous, Sarah, Cat, 78 kilograms of shade, Ingrid, Roma, Haley, Sam, Kira, Mooney, Puttamancer, Kirsten, Bear, Jojo Bookish, Robin, Ursula, Caitlin, Jessica, KJ, Mufflier, Celia, Deborah, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Maureen, Kit, Hidden Glade, like Julie, Patrick, and Sophie, Callison, Vampire Antihero, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, and Jenny. Thanks so much for your support, guys. I couldn't be doing this without ya.